Hello again, strategic management students. Fred David here. We're in chapter 3 today in our Pearson's strategic management textbook here. Actually, on the first half of this chapter 3 overview, we kind of stopped on page 80 here, talking about the different steps involved in developing an EFE matrix. That's the external factor evaluation matrix. As you know, if you've had a chance to read this chapter, now you realize we're going to use an EFE matrix to assimilate all the information we found online and through surveys, trade publications, or whatever about external trends, events, factors impacting our company and our industry that we cannot control. Remember, we're going to group them into two parts: opportunities that we're going to strive to take advantage of with a strategic plan, and threats that we're going to try to avoid or mitigate as going forward with some strategic plan. Because you understand, that's what we're doing in this course, developing a comprehensive strategic plan for the next 3 years, where we decide and recommend as if you're a consultant, and having studied the company and the industry, the rival firms, and are making a recommendation to the CEO or top management team with regard to a particular set of strategies. So this chapter 3 on the external assessment is going to help to provide a foundation, particularly coupled with chapter 4 on the internal assessment. So I see on page 81 here, there's a sample external factor evaluation matrix for a 10 theater cinema complex. I notice on that one on page 81, there's a weight column. Notice that as we've talked about, notice the rating column. And notice what we do is multiply the weight times the rating to get a weighted score. And then we sum that up. And that weighted score I see on page 81 is a 2.58. Now you realize in an EFE matrix, as discussed here in this chapter, that total weighted score is going to range somewhere between a 1.0 and a 4.0. So a 2.58 is a little bit above average, which means this company is doing a little bit above average on taking advantage of external opportunities and avoiding threats. So there is definite room for improvement, but they're not doing terrible. That's what this the final total weighted score would indicate to you. But I need you to keep straight going forward in these upcoming chapters here and this chapter, that the weight applies to the industry. How important is the factor in the industry for overall for being successful in the industry? And the rating applies to the company. How is the company doing on it? Whereas a rating of 4 means the company, in your best judgment, is doing wonderful, and a rating of something like a 1 or 2, the company is not doing very well at all on handling that factor. So these are not going to be wild guesses. They're going to be based on your research in IBIS World, S&P Net Advantage, and those types of sources, and then indicate what you think an appropriate number would be there. Because at the end of the day, as we talked about in our prior segment here in chapter 3, prioritization is a key in strategic planning, because we're going to need to allocate resources across segments or divisions in a prioritized manner. Because as you know, no organization or company will have enough resources of people to do everything that they would like to do. They just going to have to make some tough choices here. I see on page 82, there's an actual EFE matrix developed for Kroger Company. A couple of years ago, Kroger, using this matrix right here, after conducting their research, they developed this matrix, utilizing in their strategic planning process. And let's look at a couple of these right here on page 82 in the 17th edition. Now we are the first opportunity. Organic and natural food sales in the United States totaled 47 billion, an increase of nearly 3.7 billion from the previous year. So what we want to do with every factor we consider include, we want to ask ourselves, is it A, Q, C, D? Now it doesn't need to be all of those, but ideally we need a factor to be as close as possible to being A, Q, C, and D. That is actionable, quantitative, comparative, and divisional. So let's check this first one out. Organic and natural food sales total 47 billion, increase of nearly 3.7 billion. It's definitely actionable because Kroger might want to begin carrying more organic and natural food products in their stores, given these numbers. Okay, so it's definitely actionable. Is it quantitative? Yes, I see the total 47 billion increase of 3.7 billion. It is quantitative. Is it comparative? Absolutely. It says compared to the previous year, we're up 3.7 million. So it is. So we got the A, Q, C. Is it D? D stands for divisional. Yes, it's a segment of Kroger's products within their stores would be organic and natural foods. That's a segment or department or division. So D, the AQCD, it would, so this would meet all four of the AQCD. So we whoever did this one gave that factor a weight of 0.09, gave it a rating of 4, and that multiplied to a 0.36. So you understand the 0.09 weight now is fairly important. In other words, if we had given, since there are 20 factors here, if we had given a 0.05 to every factor as the weight, that would mean they're all equally important. 0.09 means something's going to get less than 0.05. You understand? Because this thing sums to 1. Please notice the weight column always must sum to 1. And so therefore, we must decide based on our discovery and our understanding of the industry, rival firms and so forth, what is the appropriate weight. It's one thing, folks, for me to tell you something that's important. It's something else for me to tell you, gosh, man, that thing is really important. We must. So it gives you the opportunity, the weight column and the rating column, to indicate to your audience and to include in your analysis what in your mind indeed are the most important of these factors. And the rating of 4 means whoever did this, in their view, Kroger's, compared to their rival firms, Kroger's doing a great job in terms of their selection of organic and natural foods provided in stores. So then we could go to the second one. Online grocery spending is forecasted to grow from 4.3% of total U.S. food and beverage sales to 20% by 2025. Now, I don't know where they got that number from, probably from S&P Net Advantage Industry Surveys or IBIS World. You understand groups like Standard & Poor's and IBIS World, they hire maybe 50 researchers on board all the time that are collecting this data across the industry, and they sell these databases to colleges and universities and companies and that kind of thing. So we need to tap into that big body of information out there before we bet our house, our billfold, or our pocketbook on some strategic plan. So let me just tell you, far too many companies, businesses still globally and in America, just develop a strategic plan, sometimes by just sitting around a conference table and saying, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? But that's very, very ineffective. There's a right way to do this, and being systematic, objective is going to yield tremendous competitive advantages. So that's what we're going to try to do. But that second factor I see on page 82, online grocery spending is forecast to grow from 4.3 to 20% by 2025. They gave this a weight of 0.07 and a rating of 3. And what I see from that, meaning this factor in terms of being successful in the industry, not quite as important as that first factor you see based on that weight. And Kroger's not doing quite as well on this versus rival firms. They did okay. They got a rating of 3. I mean, it's not a 1 or a 2 rating. It gave a rating of 3, but it's not a 4. So once we multiply, cross, add these up for the whole set of 20, we then have a clear understanding of what this firm is doing and how they're doing it, considering external factors out there. And that's going to be critically important. And that's like knowing you're going into a major athletic event and knowing the nuts and bolts of your rival athletes over there, knowing whether they're left-handed or right-handed or prefer to run out to the right or to the left. You understand? That's kind of what we're doing here, partly because competition is one of the 5 major forces. Remember, 5 groups of forces: competition, technology, social, cultural, demographic, political, legal, governmental, and the economy. So that's what we're doing here. So that second factor, it would be A, it would be Q, it would be C, and it would be D. So again, we hit a 4 out of a 4. And like I say, I'm happy with a 3 out of a 4 on these things, but I'm thrilled with a 4 out of 4 in terms of A, Q, C, D. With regard to any particular factor, what we can't have is vagueness. We just can't say online sales are increasing at stores, or there's an increased trend towards purchasing organic foods. I mean, nobody in the world knows what words like increase or more or decrease mean. So the numbers matter here. If it's 6% versus 16% versus 60%, as we mentioned in our prior segment here in chapter 3, you know, that number is vitally important. We might put another $30 million towards that effort in our overall strategic plan that we ultimately develop here based on what that number is. So that's kind of what's going on here. Okay, so I see a nice set there on page 82 of 10 opportunities and 10 threats. And please know it's not the first 10 opportunities you come up with or 10 threats. You may end up 45 of these things or 60 of these things. And what you see in the strategic planning template, it mirrors what companies and organizations are doing. They're distilling an exhaustive list, let's say, developed maybe through a brainstorming session with top managers after studying IBISWorld and various sources like that, Hoover's Online, Morningstar, Aller.com, distilling it down to a manageable set, 10 and 10. We can go with 10 and 10. And again, the need to do that is because we can't do everything. We need to know what in the best judgment of the top management team are indeed the most important factors. So that's kind of what's going on here with this. Don't feel like as soon as you get to the first 10, that's it, you're through. Well, there may be many, many more you could discover. Certainly for an actual company or organization, there would be over 100 opportunities and threats. Even a small business, as I mentioned in our last segment, in this small town where Francis Marion is, Florence, South Carolina, over 100 opportunities and threats facing every single business there that they could consider including in an EFE matrix. It's not just the first 10 or the first 10 threats. You understand, please. So I see for Kroger on page 82, they get a total weighted score of 3.03. 3.03 is pretty good. Remember what the range is here on this total weighted score? It's going to range between a 1 and a 4. A 1 will be the absolute worst. You could get a 4, the absolute best. So what would be the midpoint of that? 2.5. So in fact, Kroger gets a 3.03. It's pretty good. I mean, they're doing a lot of things well. If I use this in a strategic planning oral presentation or whatever, if I showed this to the audience, I would comment on that 3.03. I would say, I'm going to be recommending a lot of what Kroger's already got in place and doing, because this is a pretty good score right here, 3.03. I mean, it's not, there is room for improvement. I mean, it's not a 4.0. You understand? So that's where we're going with this. Try to be very, very steer clear of vagueness all the way through this process, folks, because that's just detrimental in actual practice of strategic planning and in the classrooms in terms of strategic management projects. Vagueness just can't handle it. Okay, I see on page 82 at the bottom and 83 another tool here that also is included in the strategic planning template, which I hope you now are getting familiar with at the strategyclub.com off the website. Excel based, many businesses, thousands probably actually using this template to actually do strategic planning. I'm thrilled that you're gaining experience and becoming proficient in that use of that template. I would even include it on my resume, folks, after another 30 days of using that thing. Include a comment on your resume, maybe saying gain proficiency in utilizing widely used strategic planning software, something like that, Excel-based strategic planning template, something like that, to trigger a recruiter or interviewer someday asking you about it, giving you therefore the opportunity to talk about your expertise with Excel and this strategic planning software. But the competitive profile matrix I see on page 83 here, that's another tool matrix companies widely using. It's in the strategic planning template. And again, the template is not going to go out there and discover the information needed to go in this thing. It's going to need you to do that and then to enter the, so the template does not do the thinking for you, but it is going to do the multiplication and subtraction, addition, and all that, developing arrows, circles, and so forth, as you'll see in later chapters. The template's very useful tool for actually doing strategic planning. So I see on page 83 with the competitive profile matrix, what we have is just one weight column. Notice that? One weight column. What is the weight column? Remember, that applies to the industry. So we've got one industry here. And then we got 3 competitors, 1, 2, and 3. And to further illustrate this, folks, I see on page 84 for a Kroger company, there's an actual competitive profile matrix developed there. And they're used as their rival firms. I see on page 84 Walmart and Amazon. So for every one of these rows, price competitiveness, I see a weight, how important it is in the, and notice these weights, folks, go from high to low, not only in this matrix, but in the EFE matrix. So don't just throw these factors in there randomly. Please, for your audience and all, let's array the factors both in an EFE and a competitive profile matrix with the highest weight first, going to the lowest weight. So our audience can know right off the bat what we consider to be the most important opportunity facing the company and the most important threat facing the company. And that rather than just randomly throwing these in there. So that's illustrated here on page 84. Also notice on page 84, try to avoid ever assigning the same rating across a row. I mean, the purpose of strategic planning, we're going to need to differentiate between one firm versus another, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to prioritize and select between many competing strategies that would be likely oftentimes very beneficial. So never would I assign a rating of 333 across a row or 244 across a row. Try to avoid assigning the same rating across a row. And again, array your factors according to high weight down to low weight. Now, one thing different about this competitive profile matrix, in addition to it focusing in on competitors, zeroing in on competitors, whereas the EFE looks at all the 10 external forces we've discussed, is that these factors down the left side, folks, in a competitive profile matrix can be strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. These are just key factors that you consider to be critical in this industry that to evaluate competitors across versus your firm. In other words, looking at this page 84, this Kroger matrix, I can see right off the bat where Kroger is strong and weak versus Walmart and Amazon. That kind of information is, that's part of what we're going to base our strategic plan on. We're going to go to battle based on information like this. So that's why the competitive profile matrix is being widely used by companies and organizations to help in their mind develop a successful strategic plan. So we'll make little decisions along the way before we're going to make the big decisions about whether to acquire another firm or backward integrate or merge or divest of something or something like that. We make little decisions along the way, please understand, in the strategic planning process, such as assigning these weights and ratings that reveal our best judgment based on our understanding, our research regarding the industry and the company. So again, we're going to avoid, I see there, for example, on page 84, table 311, Kroger, in terms of advertising, look at the rating Kroger gets for advertising. They get a 1. That means, I mean, what does Walmart get? Walmart gets a 4, Amazon gets a 2. That means, in the best judgment of the folks who developed this matrix, Walmart is absolutely crushing Kroger on advertising. So it only carried a weight of 0.05, but still it made it into the list here. And so it's another bit of information we can utilize later on. You'll see in chapters 5 and 6, 7, in terms of actually formulating and implementing an effective strategic plan. So this chapter 3 is essential it provides a foundation coupled with chapter 4 for formulating alternative strategies. And please, in the EFE matrix that I saw we were looking at on page 82 for Kroger, don't put strategies as opportunities. I mean, you don't want to put as an opportunity to acquire Target or to acquire Kmart. That'll be a strategy. So we're going to try to keep the terms straight. That's one reason in chapter 1 it kind of introduced the key terms. I mean, there may be an opportunity associated with acquire Target or acquire Kmart. An opportunity could be Kmart's sales and net income have both decreased 18% in the last 3 years. You know, that could be a factor. It could be an opportunity. You know, if they're really struggling, maybe we could get them at a good price type of thing. So strategies we're going to say for the SWOT analysis. Remember, it was introduced in chapter 1. So the bottom line for this chapter is, and when you're stating these opportunities, avoid stating them as strategies in order to do something. We're going to get to that soon enough with regard to the SWOT analysis. But we're going to have to consider internal factors in our next chapter 4 before really deciding on particular strategies that would be excellent alternatives. So we're going to do another segment in a little while, folks, on page 80, 86, 87. Actually, for every chapter, I'd like to do about a 20-minute segment on these end of chapter review questions. As you know now, I'm going to frame our answers in terms of the project you're working on, what the implications are with regard to the answer of any of these questions. I see 41 of them on page 86 and 87. We'll talk about those in a different segment. And I'm thrilled about strategic management. I hope you're becoming more and more thrilled about it, because it's an exceptionally important process concept. And I appreciate you joining in with me, folks. Take care. Thank you very much. We'll see you in chapter 4 in a minute.